so glad that you joined me this weekend. I hope you've all had a good week, even in light of all the madness that still ensues. I just want to continue to encourage you that we will get through this. We've been through hard times before, and we've came out. So do not be overcome with fear or worry. Follow the precautions of your state and local authorities, and continue to look out for each other. Continue to care. We Oftentimes, we hear so much of the negative in the news and such, we really lose a lot of the positive. That's really a flaw in human nature. But there's a lot of positive going on. Even not just see in my own community, the people coming out to support the blood drives, to continue to, volunteer, uh, despite some of the risk, and the volunteer organizations making sure that they take the precautions to keep the volunteers safe. I've seen many people wanting to help out at the food bank and places such as that. And then just even the little things like calling a family member, a friend maybe you haven't talked to in a while, or going to a neighbor who's elderly and dropping off some groceries for them. I know a lot of you are out there doing that, and I just want to tell you thank you and to keep doing it. All of that being said, let's jump into the literature. Here are some on the theme of reverence for life, always important to keep in mind. Here we have Woodman, Spare That Tree by William Blake. Woodman, spare that tree, touch not a single bough. In youth it sheltered me, and I'll protect it now. 'Twas my forefather's hand that placed it near his cot. There, woodman, let it stand, thy axe shall harm it not. That old familiar tree, whose glory and renown are spread o'er land and sea, and wouldst thou hew it down? Woodman, forbear thy stroke, cut not its earth-bound ties. Oh, spare that aged oak, now towering to the skies. When but an idle boy I sought its grateful shade, and all their gushing joy, here too my sisters played. My mother kissed me here, my father pressed my hand. Forgive this foolish tear, but let that old oak stand. My heartstrings round thee cling, close as thy bark, old friend. Here shall the wild birds sing, and still thy branches bend. O tree, the storm still brave, and woodman, leave the spot. While I've a hand to save, thy axe shall hurt it not. I'm sorry, that was by George Perkins Morris. This next one is by William Blake. The Fly. Little fly, thy summer's play my thoughtless hand has brushed away. Am not I a fly like thee? Or art not thou a man like me? For I dance and drink and sing till some blind hand shall brush my wing. I thought is life, and strength and breath, and the want of thought is death. Then am I a happy fly, if I live or if I die. And another one here by William Blake, uh, Auguries of Innocence. To see a world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. A robin redbreast in a cage puts all heaven in a rage. A dove house filled with doves and pigeons shudders hell through all its regions. A dog starved at his master's gate predicts the ruin of the state. A horse misused upon the road calls to heaven for human blood. Each outcry of the hunted hare a fibre from the brain does tear. A skylark wounded in the wing, a cherubim does cease to sing. The gamecock clipped and armed for fight does the rising sun affright. Every wolf's and lion's howl raises from hell a human soul. The wild deer wandering here and there keeps the human soul from care. The lamb misused breeds public strife, and yet forgives the butcher's knife. The bat that flits at close of eve has left the brain that won't believe. The owl that calls upon the night speaks the unbeliever's fright. He who shall hurt the little wren shall never be beloved by men. He who the ox to wrath had moved shall never be by woman loved. The wanton boy that kills the fly shall feel the spider's enmity. He who torments the chaffer sprite weaves a bower in endless night. The caterpillar on the leaf repeats to thee thy mother's grief. Kill not the moth nor butterfly, for the lad's last judgment draweth nigh. Some very good words to remember, and a very important topic as we continue to go through kind of some unpredictable and difficult times, to appreciate the little things in life, to just appreciate life. And now I'm going to go to, oh, there's so many. I'm going to go with character. There's so much to choose from in this book. And we start off with the great philosopher Plato, the inner man. Beauty depends on simplicity. I mean the true simplicity of a rightly and nobly ordered mind and character. He is a fool who seriously inclines to weigh the beautiful by any other standard than that of the good. The good is the beautiful. Grant me to be beautiful in the inner man. This next one is The Noble Nature by Ben Jonson. It is not growing like a tree, in bulk, doth make man better be, or standing long an oak, 300 year, to fall a log at last, dry, bald, and sere. A lily of a day is fairer far in May, although it fall and die that night, it was the plant and flower of light. In small proportions we just beauty see, in a short measures life may perfect be. This next one is My Mind to Me a Kingdom Is by Sir Edward Dyer. My mind to me a kingdom is, such present joys therein I find, that excels all other bliss that earth affords or grows by kind. Though much I want, which most would have, yet still my mind forbids to crave. No princely pomp, no wealthy store, no force to win the victory, no wily wit to salve a sore, no shape to feed a loving eye. To none of these I yield as thrall, for why? My mind doth serve for all. I see how plentiful surfeits oft, and hasty climbers soon do fall. I see that those which are aloft, misshape doth threaten most of all. They get with toil, they keep with fear, such cares my mind could never bear. Content to live, this is my stay, I seek no more than may suffice. I press to bear no haughty sway. Look, what I lack my mind supplies. Lo, thus I triumph like a king, content with that my mind doth bring. Some have too much, yet still do crave. I little have, and seek no more. They are but poor, though much they have, and I am rich with little store. Thy poor I rich, thy beg I give. They lack I rich, they beg I give. They lack I leave, they pine I live. I laugh not at another's loss, I grudge not another's pain. No worldly waves my mind can toss, my state at one doth still remain. I fear no foe, I fawn no friend, I loathe not life, nor dread my end. Some weigh their pleasure by their lust, their wisdom by their rage of will. Their treasure is their only trust, a cloaked craft their store of skill. But all the pleasure that I find is to maintain a quiet mind. My wealth is health and perfect ease, my conscience clear, my chief defense. I neither seek by bribes to please, nor by deceit to breed offense. Thus do I live, thus will I die. What all did so well as I. That stanza, I laugh not at another's loss, I grudge not another's pain. Wow, so important to remember right now. While there's a lot of people who are experiencing different kinds of pain, sickness, worry and anxiety. Let's really be empathetic and understand each other's hurts and bear one another's burdens and help each other walk through them. And we continue on in Men Who Men Condemn As Ill by Joaquin Miller. In men who men condemn as ill, I find so much of goodness still. In men who men pronounce divine, I find so much of sin and blot. I dare not draw, I dare not dare to draw a line between the two where God is not. We Will Speak Out by James Russell Lowell. We will speak out, we will be heard, though all earth's systems crack. We will not bate a single word, nor take a letter back. Let liars fear, let cowards shrink, let traitors turn away. We speak the truth, and what care we for hissing and for scorn, while some faint gleamings we can see of freedom's coming morn. We never know how high we are, by my favorite Emily Dickinson. We never know how high we are till we are asked to rise, and then with our true to plan, our statures touch the skies. The heroism we recite would be a normal thing. Do not ourselves the cubits warp, for fear to be a king. Here now we have a Psalm of Life by the great Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Tell me not in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream, for the soul is dead that slumbers, and things are not what they seem. Life is real, life is earnest, and the grave is not its goal. Dust thou art, to dust returnest, was not spoken of the soul. Not enjoyment and not sorrow is our destined in our way, but to act that each tomorrow finds us farther than today. Art is long and time is fleeting, and our hearts, though stout and brave, still like muffled dreams are beating, funeral marches to the grave. In the world's broad field of battle, and the bivouac of life, be not like dumb, driven cattle, be a hero in the strife. Trust no future, however pleasant, let the dead past bury its dead. Act, act in the living present, heart within and God overhead. Lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime, and, departing, leave behind us footprints on the sands of time. Footprints that perhaps another, sailing over life's solemn main, a forlorn and shipwrecked brother, seen shall take heart again. Let us then be up and doing, with a heart for any fate, still achieving, still pursuing, learn to labor and to wait. Beautiful poetry this evening. We continue on to more of Aesop's Fables. We had left off with the spendthrift and the swallow. We continue on with the old woman and the doctor. An old woman became almost totally blind from a disease of the eyes, and, after consulting a doctor, made an agreement with him in the presence of witnesses that she should pay him a high fee if he cured her, while if he failed he was to receive nothing. The doctor accordingly prescribed a course of treatment. Every time her paid her a visit, he took away with him some article out of the house, until at last, when he visited her for the last time, and the cure was complete, there was nothing left. When the old woman saw that the house was empty, she refused to pay him his fee, and, after repeated refusals on her part, he sued her before the magistrates for payment of her debt. On being brought into court, she was ready with her defense. The claimant, said she, has stated the facts about our agreement correctly. I undertook to pay him a fee if he cured me, and he, on his part, promised to charge nothing if he failed. Now he says I am cured, but I say that I am blinder than ever, and I can prove what I say. When my eyes were bad, I could at any rate see well enough to be aware that my house contained a certain amount of furniture and other things. But now, when according to him I am cured, I am entirely unable to see nothing there at all. The Moon and Her Mother. The moon once begged her mother to make her a gown. How can I, replied she? There's no fitting your figure. At one time you're a new moon, at another you're a full moon. In between whiles you're neither one nor the other. They had some illustration there. Really beautiful. The moon looks pretty disheartened. The next is Mercury and the Woodman. A woodman was felling a tree on the bank of a river, when his axe, glancing off the trunk, flew out of his hands and fell into the water. As he stood by the water's edge, lamenting his loss, Mercury appeared and asked him the reason for his grief, and, on learning what had happened, out of pity for his distress, he dived into the river, and, bringing up a golden axe, asked him if that was the one he had lost. The woodman replied that it was not, and Mercury then dived the second time, and bringing up a silver axe, asked him if that was his. No, that is not mine either, said the woodman. Once more Mercury dived into the river, and brought up the missing axe. The woodman was overjoyed at recovering his property, and thanked his benefactor warmly, and the latter was so pleased with his honesty that he made him a present of the other two axes. When the woodman told the story to his companions, one of these was filled with envy of his good fortune, and determined to try his luck for himself. So he went and began to fell a tree at the edge of the river, and presently contrived to let his axe drop into the water. Mercury appeared as before, and on learning that his axe had fallen in, he dived up and brought a golden axe, as he had done on the previous occasion. Without waiting to be asked whether it was his or not, the fellow cried, "That's mine! That's mine!" and stretched out his hand eagerly for the prize. But Mercury was so disgusted at his dishonesty that not only did he decline to give him the golden axe, but also refused to recover for him the one he had let fall into the stream. The lesson from these fables: honesty is the best policy. The next one: the donkey, the fox, and the lion. A donkey and a fox went into partnership and sallied out to forage for food together. They hadn't gone far before they saw a lion coming their way, at which they were both dreadfully frightened. But the fox thought he saw a way of saving his own skin, and went boldly up to the lion and whispered in his ear, "I'll manage that you shall get a hold of the donkey without the trouble of stalking him, if you promise to let me go free." The lion agreed to this, and the fox then rejoined his companion, and contrived before long to lead him by a hidden pit which some hunter had dug as a trap for wild animals, and into which he fell. When the lion saw that the donkey was safely caught and couldn't get away, it was to the fox that he first turned his attention, and he soon finished him off, and then at his leisure proceeded to feast upon the donkey. Betray a friend, and you often find you have ruined yourself. The next, the lion and the mouse. A lion asleep in his lair was awoken by a mouse running over his face. Losing his temper, he seized it with his paw and was about to kill it. The mouse, terrified, piteously entreated him to spare his life. "Please let me go," it cried, "and one day I will repay you for your kindness." The idea of so insignificant a creature ever being able to do anything for him amused the lion so much that he laughed aloud and good-humoredly let it go. But the mouse's chance came after all. One day the lion got entangled in a net, which had been spread for game by some hunters, and the mouse heard and recognized his roars of anger and ran to the spot. Without more ado, it set to work to gnaw the ropes with its teeth, and succeeded before long in setting the lion free. "There," said the mouse, "you laughed at me when I promised I would repay you, but now you see even a mouse can help a lion." The crow and the pitcher. A thirsty crow found a pitcher with some water in it, but so little was there that, try as she might, she could not reach it with her beak, and it seemed as though she would die of thirst within sight of the remedy. At last she hit upon a clever plan. She began dropping pebbles into the pitcher, and with each pebble the water rose a little higher until at last it reached the brim, and the knowing bird was enabled to quench her thirst. Necessity is the mother of invention. We continue on with the boys and the frogs. Some mischievous boys were playing on the edge of a pond, and, catching sight of some frogs swimming about in the shallow water, they began to amuse themselves by pelting them with stones, and they killed several of them. At last one of the frogs put his head out of the water and said, "Oh, stop! Oh, stop! I beg of you! What sport to you is death to us? The north wind and the sun. A dispute arose between the north wind and the sun, each claiming that he was stronger than the other. At last they agreed to try their powers upon a traveler to see which could soonest strip him of his cloak. The north wind had the first try, and gathering up all his force for the attack, he came whirling furiously down upon the man, and caught up his cloak as though he would wrest it from him by one single effort. But the harder he blew, the more closely the man wrapped it around himself. Then came the turn of the sun. At first he beamed gently upon the traveler, who soon unclasped his cloak, and walked on with it hanging loosely about his shoulders. Then he shone forth in its full strength, and the man, before he had gone many steps, was glad to throw his cloak right off and complete his journey more lightly clad. Persuasion is better than force. The mistress and her servants. A widow, thrifty and industrious, had two servants, whom she kept pretty hard at work. They were not allowed to lie long abed in the mornings, but the old lady had them up and doing as soon as the rooster crew. They disliked intensely having to get up at such an hour, especially in winter time, and they thought that if it were not for the rooster waking up their mistress so horribly early, they could sleep longer. They caught it and wrung its neck, but they weren't prepared for the consequences. For what happened was that their mistress, not hearing the rooster crow as usual, waked them up earlier than ever and set them to work in the middle of the night. No, they shouldn't have done that, but I'm not the biggest morning person. I'm more of a night owl, so I get where they were coming from. The goods and the ills. There was a time in the youth of the world when goods and ills entered equally into the concerns of men, so that the goods did not prevail to make them altogether blessed, nor the ills to make them wholly miserable. But owing to the foolishness of mankind, the ills multiplied greatly in number and increased in strength, until it seemed as though they deprived the goods of all in human affairs and banished them from the earth. The latter therefore betook themselves to heaven, and complained to Jupiter of the treatment they had received, at the same time praying him to grant them protection from the ills, and to advise them concerning the manner of their intercourse with men. Jupiter granted their request for protection, and decreed that for the future that they should not go among men openly in a body, and so be liable to attack from the hostile ills, but singly and unobserved, and at unfrequent unexpected intervals. Hence it is that the earth is full of ills, for they come and go as they please, and are never far away, while goods, alas, come one by one only, and have to travel all the way from heaven, so that they are seldom seen. The hares and the frogs. The hares once gathered together and lamented the unhappiness of their lot, exposed as they were to dangers on all sides, and lacking the strength and the courage to hold their own. Men, dogs, birds, and beasts of prey were all their enemies, and killed and devoured them daily, and sooner than endure such persecution any longer, they one and all determined to end their miserable lives. Thus resolved and desperate, they rushed in a body towards a neighboring pool, intending to drown themselves. On the bank was seen a number of frogs who, when they heard the noise of the hares as they ran, with one accord leapt into the water and hid themselves in the depths. Then one of the older hares, who was wiser than the rest, cried out to his companions, "Stop, my friends, take heart. Don't let us destroy ourselves after all. See, here are creatures who are afraid of us, and you must therefore be still more timid than ourselves." The Fox and the Stork. A fox invited a stork to dinner, at which the only fare provided was a large flat dish of soup. The fox lapped it up with great relish, but the stork with her long bill tried in vain to partake of the savory broth. Her evident distress caused the sly fox much amusement, but not long after the stork invited him in turn, and set before him a pitcher with a long and narrow neck, into which she could get her bill with ease. Thus, while she enjoyed her dinner, the fox sat by, hungry and helpless, for it was impossible for him to reach the tempting contents of the vessel. The wolf in sheep's clothing. A wolf resolved to disguise himself in order that he might prey upon a flock of sheep without fear of detection. So he clothed himself in a sheepskin and slipped among the sheep when they were out at pasture. He completely deceived the shepherd, and when the flock was penned for the night, he was shut in with the rest. But that very night, as it happened, the shepherd, requiring a supply of mutton for the table, laid hands on the wolf in mistake for a sheep, and killed him with his knife on the spot. The stag in the ox stall. A stag, chased from his lair by the hounds, took refuge in a farmyard, and, entering a stable where a number of oxen were stalled, thrust himself under a pile of hay in a vacant stall, where he lay concealed, all but the tips of his horns. Presently one of the oxen said to him, "What has induced you to come here? Aren't you aware of the risk you are running of being captured by the herdsmen?" To which he replied, "Pray let me stay for the present. When night comes I shall easily escape under the cover of the dark." In the course of the afternoon, more than one of the farmers came in to attend to the wants of the cattle, but not one of them noticed the presence of the stag, who accordingly began to congratulate himself on his escape, and to express his gratitude to the oxen. "We wish you well," said the one who had spoken before, "but you are not out of danger yet. If the master comes, you will certainly be found out, for nothing ever escapes his keen eyes." Presently, sure enough, in he came, and made a great to-do about the way the oxen were kept. "The beasts are starving," he cried. "Here, give them more hay and plenty of litter under them." As he spoke, he seized an armful himself from the pile where the stag lay concealed, and at once detecting him, calling his men, he had him seized at once and killed for the table. The milkmaid and her pail. A farmer's daughter had been out to milk the cows, and was returning to the dairy carrying her pail of milk upon her head. As she walked along, she fell a musing after this fashion: "The milk in this pail will provide me with cream, which I will make into butter and take to market to sell. With the money I will buy a number of eggs, and these, when hatched, will produce chickens, and by I shall have quite a large poultry yard. Then I shall sell some of my fowls, and with the money which they will bring in I will buy myself a new gown, which I shall wear when I go to the fair, and all the young fellows will admire it, and come and make love to me, but I shall toss my head and have nothing to say to them." Forgetting all about the pail, and suiting the action to the word, she tossed her head. Down went the pail, all the milk was spilled, and all her fine counsels in the air vanished in a moment. The lesson from these following fables: do not count your chickens before they are hatched. I've heard that phrase a lot. I'm going to end with going to read two more. We have the dolphins, the whales, and the sprat. The dolphins quarreled with the whales, and before very long they began fighting with one another. The battle was very fierce, and had lasted some time without any sign of coming to an end, when a sprat thought that perhaps he could stop it. So he stepped in and tried to persuade them to give up fighting and make friends. But one of the dolphins said to him contemptuously, "We would rather go on fighting till we're all killed than be reconciled by a sprat like you." The fox and the monkey. A fox and a monkey were on the road together, and fell into a dispute as to which of the two was the better born. They kept it up for some time, till they came to a place where the road passed through a cemetery full of monuments, when the monkey stopped and looked about him and gave a great sigh. "Why do you sigh?" said the fox. The monkey pointed to the tombs and replied, "All the monuments that you see here were put up in honor of my forefathers, who in their day were eminent men." The fox was speechless for a moment, but quickly recovering he said, "Oh, don't stop at any lie, sir. You're quite safe. I'm sure none of your ancestors will rise up and expose you." Boasters brag most when they cannot be detected. And so ends the reading for tonight. I will join you again tomorrow. Definitely some more poetry, Aesop's Fables, or maybe some more out of the Jungle Books. I will try to hear back from you all and let you decide that. Feel free to follow me on my Twitter at HollowsWalt, and also feel free to comment, subscribe, and like the videos so you get notified when I post more, as well as communicate with me and tell me what you want to hear. This channel is about you and for you. Thank you so much. Continue to stay safe and healthy.